everyone, Dr. Liello and I are here today to highlight a very interesting and important tool that we've recently published. I think this could be very helpful for all of us in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, with the government allowing for more and more deconfinement, we understand that the risks associated with certain activities will vary from person to person. So say, depending on your age or past medical history, or even based on the activity itself.
So true, and interestingly, our own personal philosophy comes into play here in terms of what our perception of the risk is and how much responsibility we're willing to accept. We'll get into that a little bit later.
Right, and understandably, we've been getting an overwhelming amount of questions, very specific situations. I have this as my past medical history. Am I allowed to do this? So we really think everyone's in the same boat here.
Yeah, and because of this, Cardiogenix has created our COVID-19 personal risk level calculator so that you all can determine on a personal level the level of risk posed to you by a particular activity. Now, the risk calculator was sent out to all patients last week in the form of a compact handout. Now, we want to reiterate that this is not hardcore science. This is what we call observational science, based on a ton of medical training, our understanding of pandemics, and our observation of the evolution of the pandemic over the last 6 months.
Right, and we hope that everyone uses this as a tool to empower their own decisions and give them comfort in terms of what they feel comfortable to do versus what might be a little bit riskier. So how does it work? So we'll go through it. So we start with step one. Step one is actually looking at the activity that we want to do. So here we have a different gradient. So going from level 1 all the way to level 10. There is no level 0 just because we're in a pandemic and everything has a little bit of risk associated with it. So if we start at level 1, we have activities like being alone in a country home or going for a walk alone or biking alone. And then we go all the way to level 10, which is going to a bar or club, hugging, kissing, shaking hands, things like that.
Now, it's important to note that all levels were designed with the 4 basic assumptions in mind: that you're wearing a mask, you're socially distancing, you're washing your hands often with soap if possible, and you are wearing gloves. Gloves are optional. I like to wear gloves because it reminds me to keep my hands away from my face. And if you want more details on those specific assumptions, you can refer to our most recent blog post or video from last week.
Right, and so if you go to the next page, so you've already done step 1. Step 1 is choosing the activity. The next step is looking at the age factor.
Okay, so that's what we call step 2, or the age factor, variable B. Okay, so for example, if you are 0 to 54 years old, you add 0 points to your baseline risk level. If you're 55 to 74, you would add 1 point to that level. And if you're more than 75 years old, you add 2 points. That's what we call step 2 age factor, variable B.
Right. And so the next factor, to take in consideration is the comorbidity. So this is looking at your past medical history. So you'll see here we have a whole list of medical conditions that would be putting you at a higher risk for coronavirus and complications from the coronavirus. So they include heart disease, high blood pressure, chronic kidney and chronic lung disease, diabetes, obesity, and cancers as well.
Very important. And Dr. Liello, isn't it true that 90% of Canadians have at least one of those comorbidities?
Absolutely.
Now, if you turn to the next page, you'll see another modifier. We call that step 4, environmental factor. Now, this is how socially distanced you can be at home and at work. So for example, if you are more than 6 feet away at home, and if that's also possible, and at work, you add 0 points to your risk level calculator. However, if you are less than 6 feet away from others at work or at home, you have to add 1 point. That's step 4, environmental factor, variable D.
Perfect. So once you have all of these variables, you add them all up, and then you get a total score for what the risk of that activity is specific to your health. So why don't we do a few examples?
Okay, sure.
So let's say, Dr. Oommen, someone wants to go to a barbecue, outdoor barbecue.
Okay, great example. So I'm looking here, outdoor backyard barbecue, less than 10 people, 5.
Perfect. So we'll start with a 5 there. Now, this individual that wants to go is 50 years old.
Okay, I'm 0 to 54 years old, Dr. Liello, we add 0.
Perfect. And in general, good health, not taking any medications, no blood pressure, no diabetes, but they are obese.
Okay, obesity gives us +2.
Okay. And they're able to work from home, maintain adequate social distance, and the house is big enough, so there's no issue with being too close.
Okay, in that case, we add 0 points.
Perfect. So that's our total score. So we have 5 plus 2 essentially. So here we're at a 7. So essentially you went from a baseline risk of 5 going to a barbecue, but now adding your own personal risk factors up to a 7.
So a much riskier activity for this particular patient.
Exactly. Let's do another good common example. So let's say they want to go to an indoor gathering. It's someone's birthday, it's a dinner party at the house.
Okay, let's start with that. That would be 6. Dinner party, indoor, less than 10 people.
Perfect. And now the patient is 75 years old.
Okay, that is age factor 75 and above, we need to add 2.
Perfect. And now this patient, well controlled medical conditions, but has high blood pressure and diabetes.
So 2 comorbidities, but
Yeah.
1 or more, we add +2.
Plus 2. And now, again in this case, able to maintain social distancing both at work and at home.
Okay, so that's +0.
Perfect. So again here, now we have 6 plus 4 essentially, so we're at a 10. So we went from a baseline risk of 6 just based on the activity alone, and now for this individual, it's more like a 10.
Maximum level.
Yeah.
Very interesting, thank you. So, as I mentioned earlier, we added something called the philosophy factor, and it's based on what your own perception of the risk is. This ranges from 100% selfish to 100% selfless. Now, of course, nobody is at one extreme or the other. Most of us are somewhere in between. And if an activity is rated as a risk to you, yet nevertheless you choose to do it based on your philosophy, that's your personal choice and freedom.
Right. And we just suggest medically that if you are going to go about and do these activities, that then you maintain like 2 weeks of quarantine before visiting someone who doesn't share that same philosophy as you. So what do I mean? Let's say you really want to go to a bar or a club. You know, that's a risk level of 10 on our scale. But you know, your philosophy in life is YOLO. You only live once, whatever, you know, whatever happens is gonna happen. That's fine, that's a risk level 10. But now let's say, you know, tomorrow you wanna go see your grandmother. Your grandmother's been staying home. She's not even going to the grocery store because that's a risk level of 3, and with her other risk factors, she thinks it's too much. Well, you know, now your cool grandmother went to the club, went to the bar with you. It's really the same thing. And you know, of course I'm choosing the most extreme example. It's the same thing if you were to go to a barbecue, go play golf, go play tennis. Essentially, you want to keep that 2 weeks. If you don't share the same philosophy as the person you're going to visit, out of respect to them and for their health, stay away.
Wow, it's an interesting point in time, Dr. Liello, where your worldview influences the health of yourself and others. Now, we know it's impossible to put every single activity possible into our risk level calculator, but we hope it's a template that you could use in your day-to-day activities to help make educated decisions as we move together through this pandemic. Now, we can discuss at length whether a barbecue is a level 6 or a level 3, and there's really no right or wrong answer. This is all based on our experience, our perspective, our understanding of our patients at this moment in time.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, it's really at this moment in the pandemic. So this is subject to change as the pandemic goes on, and of course we'll update our scale as we go.
That's all for today. Good luck and stay safe.